Hi, everyone. Welcome. I think they like each other. Yeah. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's fun to see you all today after such a gorgeous day yesterday. I really appreciated being with all of you outside. What a gorgeous day. I enjoyed your questions and our conversations. It was such just a very heartwarming experience for me to be out with all of you. So thank you for your effort to be part of the field trip yesterday, all of you in your different ways. So we'll begin with a few announcements. Here we go. We're on page 122. So the TA conversations, the opportunity is still available. If you chose to sign up on the clipboard, then you've gotten information from Autumn, and that will send you to a Google link, a Google spreadsheet where it has information about the TA conversations, and then you sign up for a slot. If you're not available for one of those slots offered, then please feel free to send us an email and we will set another time for you. So it's really important. I think maybe you've noticed that the diversity of TAs that we have in the room, and by diversity, I mean all of the different ways that we are diverse, right? In the things that we study, the places that we're from, the language that we use, just so many different ways that we are diverse, that to bring that to the TA experience really makes this room so much more vibrant. So you might be considering, well, I'm only a first-year student. I don't know if I can do that. There's a whole semester of training that helps you prepare. You might also be thinking, I'm a junior and I don't know if I can do this. There are so many ways that we doubt ourselves and that we tell ourselves these stories, but I'd like you to consider what's right for you in the way that might be moving forward. And if you're not choosing that path, then that's okay too. That's what you need. That's great. So this TA conversations are still available. There's an event this week at Shavers Creek. I sent out a Canvas message. It's for students, by students. It's organized by the Recreation Park and Tourism Management 456 class. So that's an event planning class. And so at Shavers Creek, food, crafts, and fun with a Beltane-inspired celebration. So I sent this out via Canvas message for you so that you have that information. Get some carpools together and head on out to Shavers Creek for another experience, another beautiful day too, I think. We also have Resolving a Nature Mystery. It's in your journal right after week 4. This is worth 1 point of extra credit, Resolving a Nature Mystery, and that's there for you. It is due to your TA by this Friday. So you can turn that into them with your journal this week and get that 1 point of extra credit and figure out something interesting that's happening in nature. This week, there's also a reflection action assignment of imagining a new story, imagining a new way of being in the world. So it brings together this idea that we're in a cultural shift of our story right now. And how is it that you can imagine a pathway forward for yourself that might be a story that you haven't considered before, but thinking about the possibilities of what you have discovered or what you know about yourself, it could be really interesting. So how will you find a path in a way that's inspiring to you? So play with those ideas and it can be a really exciting and freeing journal entry this week. So for our centering today, with your feet on the floor, eyes closed if you so choose. And bringing yourself into a posture of awareness of your body, of your mind, of your gut. And feel yourself as you take those deep breaths, a long inhalation through your nose, and then a very slow exhalation. And then another smooth and filling and emptying. On this next slow inhale, take note of how the space between your ribs expand to allow your lungs to expand, to allow the air to come in. And understanding that that's happening in your back body too, in your spine. There is expansion as you take those big breaths in. We are made, our bodies are made to be flexible. This flexibility in our bodies helps us to survive. So what other kinds of flexibility should we consider or could we consider, right? So how flexible are you? I'll come back to that in a moment. How flexible are you when it comes to change? So take a moment and consider that for yourself and then talk to your neighbor about that. How flexible are you? So this is an important reflection opportunity as we're moving through this part 3 of the course when we're considering what's possible as far as things that we can shift in our own lives that will lead us to this place where we can lower our ecological footprint significantly, as well as work less, have more fun, be more connected, be more free and creative, and become more fully ourselves. Sometimes those require change, those steps require changes of thought. They might require changes of beliefs, the way that we move through the world. So understanding, sometimes I can be very inflexible. If somebody shifts a plan on me, it's very hard for me. Once I have a plan laid out, it's very hard. If I'm meeting a friend and then things change, but it goes back to that idea of 2 dots, aligning the things that we have with the things that we want. How can we do that in these ways where we can expand the possibilities of our connection? So today we're going to wrap up a little bit of the shelter class from last Wednesday, and then we're going to move into transportation thoughts. And as always, we only have 50 minutes, and so there's way more things that we could talk about. And so I'm here just to spark your interest or your curiosity, and then you have the opportunity to go out and explore more and then let me know what you're learning, which is always fun for me. So I showed you this image of my house and thinking about the idea that the houses have changed in size over time. Somebody on the field trip asked me about my house and understanding that I bought this 20 years ago and that was at a point in time where my story in my head was that I need to have a house. I need to have a house where I can get to and from work. I need to have a house to shelter my son. And yet, is this the house that I needed? There's lots of things that I love about it, but it's a really big house. I don't know that it's what I needed at the time. There are lots of things I love about it, but if I could go back in time, I would choose differently. But at this point in time, it's what I got. So how can I work with that choice that I made a long time ago to make things work for my life now, 20 years since buying this house? So our choices ebb and flow as resources come and go. And I just want to point out that the place where you are now is going to shift. And then the place where you are, like, change is the only constant. So what we can do is what we can do in the moment. So then we talked about how the average floor area, square foot area has increased over time. And I'm curious about your perception of this, your thinking about this, is that, in 1950, they averaged 3 to 4 kids in a space of 1,000 square feet. So thinking about the place where you grew up, and whatever that story is, how did your experience of space in your abode shape the relationships that you had in your household? So I'm curious about that and wonder if you want to talk to each other and then let me know. Yeah. So proceed. Talk to each other. Space. You want? So what's your experience, the correlation between space and relationships? If you see one, maybe you don't. But yeah, Pauline's coming.
So I grew up in the city. I'm from Philly, and I live in a row home that's about 1,000 square feet. And I have 3 siblings, so I've always shared a room with my sister. And because our house is so small, it's kind of like forced us to be much closer. And we're just very family oriented. So I think although the space is small, it brought me closer to my family, which I appreciate.
Thanks for saying so. Interesting. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
I actually grew up in a very big house, but I also have a lot of siblings, like 10 plus. So uh, it was very fun. but the focus on the house wasn't the house, but it was the garden. We had a very big garden.
Yeah.
So my father made sure that we would have a lot of space outside so we can go and play outside and be just outside and have fun.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Hmm. Yeah.
There you go.
Wait for a moment. So I grew up in a relatively small house, but I only had one older brother. But that didn't stop us from beating the crap out of each other. So that was like, I think that was a pretty edifying experience. So yeah, it was a positive experience.
Yeah. Sweet. Thank you. I laugh particular because I watch my two sons like doing something similar, I imagine. So space, it's interesting the relationship between space and relationship. And so it's just kind of a curiosity, I guess, that I wanted to pose to all of you and expand that conversation a little bit. So then thinking about the spaces between houses, right? That a lot of people have grown up in neighborhoods like this. It is suburbia, the space outside the city where people drive to, the most ecological harmful form of land settlement ever invented. So we're going to watch a quick video that I discovered through this book that came out in 2020. And the idea of this cultural evolution that happened in that time that we've been talking about, that 1950s where things really shifted. So check out this video. Interesting story.
And cities have fundamentally altered how we built themselves over the last 60 years. And to me, the place that it really started was the 1939 World's Fair. At what was the most successful World's Fair in history, the most successful exhibit was one called Futurama.
To help us get a glimpse into the future of this unfinished world of ours, there has been created for the New York World's Fair a thought-provoking exhibit of the developments ahead of us, a vivid tribute to the American scheme of living. Come, let's travel into the future. What will we see?
Futurama portrayed the future of the city in that distant year 1960.
We are now seeing is a vision, an artistic conception which may undergo many changes as it develops into the great realities of tomorrow.
And it portrayed a city that was car-driven, lots of open spaces. You could live in the country and drive to your job downtown, and you'd have the best of two worlds.
Over space, man has begun to win victory.
Suburban splendor and urban excitement. Not coincidentally, Futurama was sponsored by General Motors, and they were promoting what we wanted. And it's my sense that 1939, just before the war, the clouds are leaning over Europe. We go off to war, and we have this image that's mulling in our minds, and we come back and we implement Futurama.
15 million GIs came back from the war, clamoring for new homes and a piece of land in the country. Almost overnight, suburbia was born.
A whole new idea about American communities. And my father was a part of that because he was a builder. And so in our area in Kansas City, Missouri, his employer, the J.C. Nichols Company, was finishing a home a day for years following the Second World War. And this was all about a new, hopeful American dream.
So the idea of this connection between cars and neighborhoods is really deeply tied and very dramatic. Yes. So there's just this really interesting place where those two things intersect and make for a really nice transition from this place of shelter to the place of transportation. So let's reflect for a moment and just think about on transportation, right? Just think about personally and for our communities. So I've mentioned to you in a previous class, the climate class actually, about that I live about 7 miles from campus and also 7 miles from Shavers Creek. I live right in the middle. So on any one day, depending on where my work is, I can go to either one of those places. I mentioned that I don't choose to bike to either of those places. One involves quite a mountain that I'm not fit enough to bike over currently and never have been. But then also driving to campus doesn't involve the mountain, but it does involve time. And so at this point in time, the way that I've chosen that seems to make sense for me, that balances as much as I can, is that I drive a 2016 Honda Fit, right? And so it gets about 34 miles per gallon, sometimes as much as 42 miles per gallon. And I can drive into town and leave. So rather than biking, I can get home in time because I'm a single mom. I also need to care for my children. So there's this balance. It's the best current situation that I can come up with to balance what I care about environmentally and also what I need to do in my personal, in my life. And so we have these choices, right? Thinking about driving a car that has a higher miles per gallon is really important to me. The hybrids of today have a battery that is challenging, right? It runs out. So over the course of time, you have to replace that battery, which a lot of resources go into. So if you think back to that conversation between the corn and the ethanol, how much goes into the choices that are made for these things? And each of you has the power of knowing all of the circumstances that you need to know to make choices accordingly. So think about that. What's great about cars and what's not so great about cars? Take a moment and talk to your neighbor about this. What's great about cars and what's not so great? My God. So what's great about cars? How do you feel about that? What do you feel is great?
Um, I would say what's great about cars is that it gets me from place like point A to B. Um, but I wouldn't say what's not so great about it is that I have to keep up with the maintenance or these days gas.
Mm-hmm.
Spend probably about $200 on gas like a week. Not even like 3 days. But I rely on cars so much because I need to get to where I need to be. But if
Yeah.
I don't have a car, I'm not walking. Uh,
Yeah.
and I I don't know how to ride a bike, so I don't want to do that either. But car is my top priority right now. So yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. Up here, Paulina, there's someone. Mhm. Thanks.
I really like my car just because it offers a level of personal safety. I've had a couple rough experiences on public transportation that sometimes makes me a bit wary of being around strangers in a confined space. So that's one like alternative positive to having a personal vehicle. But I also acknowledge that in terms of greenhouse gases and emissions, that it's not really good. The fact that we're such a car-centric culture kind of has ruined our natural landscape to a degree. Um, in a perfect world, I would love for public transportation to be the main mode of transportation, or for things to be more walkable.
Mhm.
But in general, I think that cars offer a couple benefits, but
For sure.
a lot more could be improved about
Mhm.
them.
Yeah. Interesting. So again, the balance. Yeah. Thank you.
So, something that we talked about that's not so great about cars is that they're such a status symbol and people just refuse to buy like used cars. I was talking about how my parents, like, we've always bought used and older cars and we've never had any sort of issues with them. I just don't really see the point personally in spending like 50,000 plus dollars on a brand new car that probably isn't even going to run as well as an older car. And I don't see the purpose. And I think that that's something that we are like really used to is like being consumers and buying new things and always having to buy new things.
Thanks. Interesting point. Yeah. And I think Morgan behind you is.
Every time we have this lecture, I just always think of this book that I read in high school called Happy City. And I think I've talked to you about this before, Jen, but it's basically all about how cars and driving in cars, specifically for long periods of time, are proven scientifically to negatively affect your mental health. Like they make you more angry, anxious. Um, and I remember after reading that in high school, because I would have to commute like 45 minutes to high school. And I really noticed how making that commute every day made me like miserable. Like I would get home and I would just be like completely drained and like just from like sitting in traffic or like construction. So like coming to Penn State and being in a walkable city definitely changed my like daily mood. So
Interesting. Thank you, Morgan. Yeah. Happy city. Cool. So all of these ups and downs, we're gonna hit on. I mean, I like listening to my music, right? Or my podcasts. Sometimes in the car, it's my only alone time, right? And so there are some really great things about them, and then the not great things. And of course, I'm gonna tell you about those because they are related to the class content. So 1 gallon of gas turns into 20 pounds of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So that seems pretty crazy because 1 gallon of gas weighs about 6.3 pounds. But once it combusts in the engine and you add the oxygen to it, that makes it so much heavier. So 20 pounds of carbon dioxide when it's burned. So the oxygen is what's adding it. So it's the chemistry here that's interesting, right? And also just unbelievable that 1 gallon of gas sends 20 pounds of carbon dioxide into our atmosphere. So when we consider that, that's one point, the environmental factor. And then when we think about full cost accounting, right? There are two ways we're going to think about what's called full cost accounting today. So right now we're going to think about it from the gasoline standpoint. So the full cost accounting of a gallon of gasoline, as you know, the prices have gone up dramatically lately because of things that are happening far, far away in the world that's influencing, which helps us to understand a little bit more about this full cost accounting. So when we are taking into consideration all the different things that go into the gasoline, like getting to the pump, if we were going to consider all property acquisition, the exploration for gasoline, and then finding it or not finding it, then the development costs, then all of that goes into the cost pool. And then we need the transportation, the refining processes, the space that it takes for the refining, all of those different. So when we take into the full cost of what a gallon of gasoline costs, we should really be paying closer to $15 a gallon instead. And I want to acknowledge that this is an important process, this whole idea of full cost accounting. What is actually the inputs? And so to balance the conversation, this is an important process that we need to consider also for solar panels and for hydroelectric and for nuclear power. All of these that have a lot more input than we really consider when we talk about the ending cost. There's another way then also to think about the full cost accounting of having cars. So it's 92% of households in America have a vehicle available to them. 92% of households. So lots of cars out there on the road. So when we consider full cost of what a car costs, right? So we didn't consider in the conversations the hard parts about cars. Car accidents are the leading cause of death for people ages 5 to 29. So about 40,000 people die every year in crashes on US roadways. It's about $1.9 trillion in societal harm, which is $465 billion in economic costs and $1.4 trillion in quality of life costs. So the idea that we have so many people that have cars, that includes medical care, workplace costs, congestion impacts, travel delays, excess fuel consumption, pollution, emergency services, property damage. So that's all involved in the number of cars that are on the road right now. It's also true that pedestrian and bicyclists are dying more with car accidents. So 7,000 pedestrians killed in motor vehicle crashes in 2024. So how has this changed over time? Like, where is distracted driving affecting us? Why are those numbers continuing to be on the increase? And which then brings us to the community factor of cars. So we're going to watch this video. It's embedded, I think, or you can, whatever you prefer there. Yeah. Community costs of roads.
Provide first evidence-based research of the problem of traffic on neighborhood streets. It provided the foundational arguments for traffic calming.
Donald Appleyard, who was a professor, conducted a series of studies on 3 different streets in San Francisco, chosen to be as identical as possible in every dimension except for one, the amount of traffic on each street. And what Donald Appleyard was able to show, that just the mere presence of cars with the envelope of danger that they project around them and the noise and the pollution crushes the quality of life in our neighborhoods.
What's really interesting about the graphics with global streets and what they really provided was that they removed us from just looking at specific numbers of people being hit or killed on the streets, but actually showing that there was this other way that we could measure the environmental impacts of traffic on neighborhood streets. Things such as a light traffic street helps knit a community together And in contrast, a heavily trafficked street would actually rip it apart, and fewer social ties were able to be created.
This chart here shows the social interaction on these three different streets. So each line shows a connection between one person on the street and another. There are just a lot fewer lines on the heavily trafficked street as opposed to the moderate or the light traffic street, which clearly has a lot more interconnection. So what these charts are showing is that people on the light traffic street, no more people have more friends than on the heavily trafficked street. On the light traffic street, people have on average 3 friends per person. And on the heavily trafficked street, 0.9 friends per person. The fact that the amount of traffic on the street on which you live can impact the number of friends you have in the world is of enormous significance. The other thing that Donald Appleyard plotted on these charts are these little dots that indicate where people gathered. So it shows on the heavily trafficked street, there are a much smaller number of dots, and there are only a handful of places where people would gather on the street. The fact that they were able to measure, quantify the reduction in number of friends, the number of acquaintances that's caused by traffic is enormously important and helps to illuminate the invisible harm that's done by traffic every day.
Okay, Scott.
Also, these graphics.
So it's interesting that this is my neighborhood. So the little red spot, that's my house right there. And so I have this is Route 45 traveling here, which comes into State College this way. And then this is Route 26 going this way. So when you rode the bus yesterday, you came this way from town and then up over the mountain. So these two streets are pretty busy with big trucks and buses, as well as lots of car traffic. And it's interesting when I watched that video about neighborhoods that this is where I know most people, right? In my corner, and where my children have some connections and friends, because crossing these streets is a deterrent for us. So making sure there's now a cool little corner store right here where we can go and buy eggs and basic foods, vegetables, which is really cool. But it's interesting to note how people are now traversing this neighborhood. So how thinking back to your childhood neighborhood, what does that look like? Where were your friends? Where were your connections and your parents' friends and all of those things? So a point of reflection. So if we think about then cities as places to live, right, where there can be these interesting neighborhoods, this is the European template that has these big open spaces. This is something that has been considered for downtown State College. So place yourself in your imagination on the corner by the corner room, and then the block going up to Panera, that people have proposed that that block gets closed off so that it's an open street like this, maybe a fountain in the middle, maybe some benches, whatever it is, but that street is not open to traffic. How does that sit with you? What do you think about that idea? How does that make you feel, right? What's your intuition about that? So take a moment and talk to your partner about that possibility. Would you like it? I realized that my notes stopped printing. Yeah. I just grabbed like, oh, there's nothing. And here we go. Great. I was like watching the video, like quickly reviewing, like what's coming up? Like I know I looked at it and yeah. So what do you think? Close it, leave it open? What are pros or cons? What would you like to say about that?
I think it'd be really cool, especially because there's so many connecting roads between Beaver and College Ave that I think closing off one and just making it a space for pedestrians would be awesome. I think they already close off one of the roads. I forget. I don't think it's that one, but it's one that they do the farmers market there. Having a space that could be just permanently for stuff like that would be cool. And especially during football season and just weekends, it gets really packed and the sidewalks are really small. So you're always brushing past people. So if there was a big open space where people could hang out, and not have to worry about a car flying through, I think that'd be cool.
Thank you, Ben. One opinion? Yep. Jihad has something behind you there.
I agree that it could be very beneficial for society because I think we're so far removed from each other that being in a place where we can all just like commune would make it better to interact with people. To agree with the last point, our streets are really small. We go to a pretty packed school. So often me and my partner talked about how we're often walking in the streets anyways. So to make it a little bigger for a lot of people. But I also have a question or like a rebuttal. I feel like our society is so spaced out and we don't really interact with many people. Anyways, do we actually think that like opening a place like that would prompt people to talk to each other? Because I still don't think that that would work.
It's a great question. So is there anybody who would like to speak to the opposite, that leaving the street open is better, or that you want to speak to his question?
In my hometown, we have something like this, and I think it is really beneficial because we host like concerts there and farmers markets and a lot of different events for like all demographics and stuff. So I think that if the space like this came to State College, it would be really beneficial for people to get together and also have somewhere for you to like rest and hang out instead of just walking around the entire time because there isn't that much outdoor seating downtown if you're not going to eat somewhere. So I think this would be really nice.
Okay, cool. There are a couple over here for maybe people, anybody speaking to the opposite side of the argument?
Can you repeat the question again real quick? Just
Sure. Do you think that opening that space would be, or to, I guess, closing it to traffic, opening it to open space, is that a beneficial idea, a good idea, or not?
I feel like it's beneficial if the community around there is also like the type of people who would actually talk outside, because it depends. Like if you're in an area where it's like a nice tightly knit society, but it's like still cramped with roads, I feel like they might not talk to each other as much if they're like if there's no space. But if there is space, I feel like they'll actually meet together if there's like events organized. Because like back where I come from, like near Philly area, not in Philly, but near, there's this park that we have in our town that's right next to the library. So it's like a parking lot shared. So like if you go to that park and then there's a field right across the road. The road is really trafficy, but we have that goes a bridge that like lets us walk under it and go across to the field. So we have events there, either there at the park, and we have a lot of people show up and it's really nice. So I feel like it could be beneficial.
Okay. Let's hear one more comment.
I was already talking about this idea with one of my friends the other day. The college, like where I'm from, they have this type of thing, except with like instead of a fountain, they have like a live band that performs every night. And it's like always so fun because it's just like everybody, no matter where you were in the night, everybody usually goes there like late into the night. And it was always just like so much fun. And I think a lot of the area back there is like not as many people go back there because there's nothing to do back there. So if this existed, like it would be just more lively.
Okay, so all votes for this to happen. That's really interesting. I appreciate that. And it's that meeting of town and gown, right? Of college next to the town and how those choices are made. And so I appreciate hearing about that. I also think it would be pretty cool, but there are some people that are opposed to it. So it has not yet happened. But maybe someday. So considering how much we drive, right? What are the average distances that we're driving? It seems as though more than 40% of vehicle trips are less than 2 miles. So when you're reviewing your travel from place to place, you can do a transportation audit, right? Does driving really save time? This is considering that full cost accounting in a very different way. That how much time does it take you to really get your keys, get out the door, get to the car, and then, you know, wherever you're parked, it might be in front of your building or where you live, it might be across campus or some other place. So considering how much time it takes to get to the car, and then when you get in the car and you begin to travel, and then the stoplights, and then so this is something that you can do. Does driving actually save your time when you consider the full cost accounting? So then lowering our footprint, of course, what's possible? Some of you have already mentioned public transportation and the ups and downs of this, that there are a lot of different, there used to be a bus, I've said this, from Pine Grove Mills into town, and there weren't enough people to make it worthwhile running. So it doesn't work for me to do public transportation any longer. And it didn't work for me then either because the times that it was running. So it's a nice idea. And in some places it works brilliantly, right? All of the different. So again, just understanding the choices available. And then of course, biking. When we take into the idea of how much energy it takes for us to do biking, if we eat 100 calories worth of food, technically or typically that would take you about 3 miles on your bike. 100 calories of energy takes you about 3 miles on your bike. When you consider that comparison, that means that a gallon of gas has a lot of calories. And so when we consider that math, bikes get about 930 miles per gallon. That's our energy used. So 50% fold in, or 50-fold reduction in ecological footprint. So for those of you who do bike or can bike, but then again, full cost accounting, right? Here are cycling lanes in Europe. They've put in places for people to ride. The possibilities are much greater in that area. But then when we consider campus and all of the signs that are around, bicycle-friendly campus, right? Is it really a bicycle-friendly campus? What do you think? I would love to just hear a couple of your quick responses about this. For this one, a quick poll. How many of you think that it is a bike-friendly campus? And how many people think it is not a bike-friendly campus? Interesting. So we don't have time to dive into it. I'm glad you had some good conversation about it. I do want to say, though, that what we are talking about is more connections on Wednesday. Thank you very much. Have a good day. And I don't know what's next slide, so go with the flow.
Like I looked at the clock and it was 3:20 and like nobody noticed.
Yeah, right.
I wanted to chat.
I know. It's good. Yes, that is good.